To get this story, it had echoes and questions. But the journey became for us, as myself and my editor, I think more of an interior journey, because you couldn't manifest Lincoln's time with some train tracks. In all seriousness, it was a bit of a mess, mentally, because the idea that came to me originally was to do a voyage, a trip of the 1,600 miles of the Lincoln funeral train. 2015 is going to be a big celebratory year of Abraham Lincoln's life and accomplishments. It's an anniversary, 150 years from his death. The first thing that came up was a massive feeling of inadequacy. That how do you do this? How do you do this? You can't find Lincoln, you can't find the people dressing that way, but you're trying to find an essence, right, a metaphor. I think when it began to click, the first metaphor for feelings that we had was when we went to Harlem. You start reading more about the funeral train, and they discussed people all over the place, all over the tracks. I mean, they were talking about 500,000 people. They were talking about a lot of people. And in Harlem, it was the closest we got to a train track full of people. And if you look, there was all kinds of people there waiting for an Amtrak train going north. It wasn't, of course, the funeral train. But in your head, that's what you try to find, those metaphors. He manifests himself in the people and their attitudes. Lincoln had that magic of bringing us together and dividing us, whatever it is, so much, but on the other hand, trying to force us to think and come back together and be something better and special. There was a panic point where I was getting the facts of Ford's Theater, but I wasn't getting any feeling to me. I went in and I had seen other people's photographs. First, you try to replicate them, and we only have a few minutes. Then I gave up and I stood back. Then I realized that it wasn't the whole chair, it wasn't the balcony. The primary element is the back of the chair, because that's how it happened. And it became quite emotional, because this is the moment when a lot was over. It wasn't that a man was dead, but the promise of what he could have brought was also over. I think the tragedy, and where we miss Lincoln terribly, it's like we miss Martin Luther King terribly, is that they were voices and they got us thinking. They didn't solve all the problems, but got us thinking. When you're preparing a story, you got to go out for what's easy and what's not easy. And what's easy is, look how many Abraham Lincoln high schools there are. So we called the school and they said, yes, we have a football game. I kept trying to photograph them. I getting their gear on, I photographed this and that. It was very, very, very dark. And then I walked around the corner, and not only is this boy, he wasn't quite questioning me. I don't know what he was doing. But we had one of those things that happen once in a while between a photographer and a subject, where I'm questioning what he is, and he's questioning what I am. You don't know what he's thinking. He was very profoundly there for that moment. It's, again, you're trying to find pictures that say something, but that are open-ended so that you know that it's not over yet. It's an irrelevant journey to try to, at this stage of the game, to try to find Lincoln in the physical. The Lincoln that really is important exists in people's minds, in their attitudes, and in their own battles, and what they think about, and the questions he brought up and confronted us with still exist.